I remember when I was learning a lot of psychology, a lot of my mentors would tell me there's actually, even within psychology, a lot of like disagreements and debates. Like, no, it's not this, it's family systems. It's not family systems, it's this. And I think this does a really good job of integrating the models because it looks at where essentially all of our challenges stem from, which is our wants. A lot of people don't realize this, but the part of the brain that creates wants is completely unrestrained. It's creating endless wants and desires one after another. And the only job of this part of the brain, which I call the wanting mechanism, is to create wants. And it's cranking out wants one after another, day after day, faster than any one person can achieve. And you can think of the wanting mechanism as a simple on-off switch that gets flipped based on certain cues. It sees someone with nice shoes and it wants it. The latest iPhone comes out, it wants that too. A pretty girl walks by and we want that as well. So the wanting mechanism creates so many wants that no one person has the time, energy, or bandwidth to achieve in a lifetime. And this is really important to understand because when we have a want that we can't achieve is where a lot of our struggles are coming from. There's no struggle if there's no want, if that makes any sense. And then, so we have one part of the brain that creates want and another part that actually checks to see if that want is achievable or doable and allows us to act on that want. And this is the part that I call resistance. So resistance doesn't care how much you want something. If it doesn't give you the green light to act, you cannot act. And then we look at all the reasons why resistance comes up, and it kind of you can fit in all these different models into that side of resistance.
Okay, so then from there, is it just deciding? Because I would imagine resistance is not necessarily a bad thing. Because when I always think of it, I'm like, oh, it's a bad thing. But by this conception of it, it wouldn't be, because you do want resistance for certain wants because you can't pursue everything.
Right. So resistance isn't a bad thing. It's there to help us, but it can go overboard. And the challenge with the resistance is that when it stops us, it doesn't tell us it's stopping us or why. It uses manipulative tricks. And so a lot of times the things we're doing is really a trick of resistance to keep us either spinning in circles or to have us avoid the thing that we really want to be doing deep down. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a lot of things that are comfortable for a person isn't necessarily what they want to do. It's really a trick of resistance to keep them from doing a deeper want that they have that the brain might think for various reasons it's not good to go after. So when we talk about tricks, there's a lot of tricks. And I can give an example of one of the tricks. Several years ago, I had heard a woman speak in South Africa about her journey of addiction. She described a pattern that she fell into that many addicts fall into. She said that most addicts know what they're doing is wrong. You know, when they're looking for the next hit, a part of their mind knows that they should stop. Do you think, can you guess what they do that prevents them from stopping?
What prevents them from stopping?
Yeah.
They just have a deeper want?
It's a sneaky trick that keeps them perpetually stuck in their addiction. They say, after the next hit, I'll stop.
No. Okay.
After the next one, I'll stop. I just need to do it one more time, but after, I'll stop. And the thing is, they keep saying it. And when they say it, they're convinced that after the next one, they'll stop. Like absolutely convinced. In their mind, they truly believe after the next hit, they'll stop. And this is a pattern that you, I, and essentially all of our viewers and listeners fall into. Anytime a want comes up that resistance doesn't want us to go after, it'll throw a voice in there that says, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it this weekend. I'll do it next week. I'll do it next month. And when the later or the next arrives, we push it off for the next and next and next until one of two things happens. One, years go by until you're married, have 2 kids, a stressful job, and as a result, no more time, or you completely forget the goal. And so it's really important for a person to understand that when they hear that voice of like, oh, I'll do it later or next time, no, it's not necessarily their voice. It's the voice of resistance that's preventing them from doing the thing, because if it wasn't resistance, it would have done it. And so this is one of the tricks that come up, and there's tons of other tricks like that as well. And so essentially with this model, it's like we have these wants, and then the resistance reviews it, and resistance says, no, we're not going to go after it. It doesn't say, hey, we're not going to go after it. It'll put you in various avoidance behaviors. And I just gave you an example of one of them. But there's so many other types of avoidance behaviors that'll keep us from going after the thing. And a lot of times we'll put things off until we forget about it. And then resistance wins because we forgot about it, we don't end up doing it. And because we don't end up doing it, again, resistance gets that win for that one.
So how do you decide when, because like you said, resistance is not necessarily bad. How do you determine whether or not it's being logical?
So we're extremely complex human beings, and it's really hard to really understand it. It requires a level of understanding that even I feel like a lot of psychologists don't have, because there's all sorts of reasons for resistance. So it really helps to understand like why your wants are coming up, if they're even rational. And if it is a want that you want, then like what's holding you back? And going through all the reasons, the criteria the mind goes through when it decides to let you do the thing. And then more importantly, like how is it showing up? Because if we're doing things like avoidance behavior, like putting things off, there's other avoidance behaviors where if a person is, so we all have like these small little tasks that don't take a lot of time or effort that we're not doing, which create a really bottleneck in our progress. And because we don't do it, we can't do the other things that can create progress in our life. And this is one of the best tricks that resistance uses. It keeps us from doing those little things. And I'll give a great example. When I first finished my first book, I was pretty nervous to market and publish it and put it out there. And I told myself, hey, before I publish and market it, I should copyright it first. Sounds like a very logical, reasonable reason, right? And copywriting was a very simple process. It took like 30 minutes to an hour to submit it to the copyright office. But I kept procrastinating on it for weeks and months, because as long as I didn't copyright it, I couldn't take the next step to market it. And although I'm thinking that, oh, it's because I haven't copyrighted it, but the real reason was that I was afraid to market it and put it out there and expose myself to feedback and criticism. So that's how resistance was showing up for me in this particular goal. The trick was, hey, as long as I procrastinate on copying, then there's like, I really can't take the next step. And anytime it was time for, my desire was, oh, hey, I should go market that book, a thought would come up, or like, I haven't copywritten it yet. Or, I'll do that tomorrow. And boom, I just keep procrastinating. So that's another trick. Some other tricks can involve making the task seem much bigger than it is. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever done something or started something that you had been putting off, but once you started it, you're like, that wasn't as bad as I thought, right? Well, that's another trick of resistance, is because it makes tasks seem like they're much bigger and larger than they are. So they're going to need a lot of time, energy, and effort. And we're just going to wait until we can call up that time, energy, and effort, or just the sheer size of how big this task seems makes us not want to do it, even though, again, it could be very simple. And that's another trick. So it helps to be aware of how our behaviors are showing up to understand if we're in resistance. Did any of that make sense? Because I know logically it makes sense, and
yeah, so
I can explain it in a course that's like flows from one to the next.
I'm seeing where resistance comes up, I'm still struggling to see
Why the resistance?
what to do about it.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have had all of those experiences of
Yeah.
there's this little thing and I'm like, oh, I can't do that. Or that
Yeah.
seems like it's going to be really hard.
Yeah.
And then it's,
So when it comes to resistance, we want to take a different approach than traditional self-help or traditional things. Because with traditional advice, you're really trying to maximize results, with maximize results or get things done. With resistance, you're trying to take the littlest steps that create the most outcome, right? And then the other aspect of that has to do with when it comes to resistance, the general advice doesn't work. You have to really focus in on what the cause of the resistance is and how it's manifesting. So let's look at a great example of what one of the causes of the resistance would be. One of the biggest causes of resistance is authority issues. Authority issues relate to our unconsciously held attitudes towards authority figures such as parents, principals, priests, police officers, and even personal development coaches like myself. I'm going to extend that definition to anyone who tells you or makes you feel obligated to do something. So, to help you understand, I had a friend whose parents always nagged him about cleaning his room. They nagged and pestered him so much that he became spiteful towards them and carried that spite for decades. So, as an adult, he lived a messy lifestyle just out of spite. He didn't understand why until he saw a therapist that his messy lifestyle was triggered by his parents from 20 years ago. He didn't know why he couldn't stay clean or organized no matter how hard he tried. And our authority issues can last a long time. We can go decades or our entire life resisting an authority and consequently not do anything they've ever said or take any advice they've ever given, no matter how long ago they said or gave it. We can essentially hold our authority issues. We can take our authority issues to our grave. Now, what that means is that to this day, in this very moment, you, I, and other people are not able to do certain things in life only because someone in their past suggested it, wanted it, or forced it upon them, just for that reason. And so a person may not have done well in school because of all the teachers telling them to study. Someone might be resistant to being on time because some person was always on their case about being timely. Or the opposite may be happening. We may have been told not to watch so much television or eat so much junk food. And now we binge like it's going out of style. And we may think it's because we like television and junk food, but it's just because we're resisting some authority at large. And the thing about our authority issues is that we don't necessarily choose them. It kind of gets triggered as we're growing up. Our unconscious picks it because it gets upset with somebody and wants to kind of get back at them by not listening to them. And we hold on to that even as adults. So when we kind of come to a point where we do want to make a life change, we do want to get healthy, that authority issue keeps us from being healthy because we're still holding resentment from somebody telling us when we're a child to eat right, better, or eat healthy. And so even though we want to do the thing, we can't because we have this authority issue. And it's not like we chose the authority issue and we're not even aware of the authority issue. It just kind of came up. And so when someone's dealing with authority issues, it really helps to understand who they're resisting and work through that. So there isn't a blanketed approach, if that makes any sense, when it comes to resistance.